beautiful morning. Blue sky, got up early at 4:30 and I'm up to Quilcene. The last time I've been up here was last autumn to see and look for autumn colors, and so I got the waders on again as usual and hiking up the Quilcene River, although this time it's spring. And the maples and the green is just now starting to come on, and I gave it a bit of time. I wanted to time it just right to where things weren't really out in full swing, but just enough to see that early young spring green here on the Quilcene River. So I hiked up the river here again with waders, set up the tripod and shot upstream. I've shot this before, but now with the green over the river, it's quite nice. And a big old log that's fallen. Again, I've shot this before here, but it was last fall since I've been here, and things were pretty barren, but again, it was beautiful. Each season has its beauty, and leaves were falling down. The flow was quite low, but with this runoff off the Olympics, the flow is quite high today, and will be till late spring anyway. And then summer, the rivers drop down and become quite low to basically a trickle. So the Quilcene River, mid-spring, and green is just coming on with the moss and good flow on the river. It's quite nice. And I also I wanted to try out this new filter, this new ND filter that I've got. And I do enjoy Polar Pro products, of course, and Format High Tech. But I did pick up this 2 to 5 stop ND filter, and it's the Mist Edition, of course, by Peter McKinnon. So I got that and wanted to bring it up here to the river and use it and check the results. I'll give you. What's cool about this filter is you take off the hard cover here, and then screw that onto your lens, like so, and then there's a rubber coating on this side that you then remove. So what's cool about it is you don't have to touch the filter at all, and so screw it onto the lens and then use the rubber gasket, if you will, and take that off, and then you can dial in 2, 3, 4 or 5 stops. Got my camera between my knees here. Hopefully this will work. So I'll take the hard cover off. Like so. Screw that onto your lens. Like so. Once that's on, take the rubber gasket, pop that off, and you're good to go. And you don't have to touch the lens, like I said, and you can dial. There's your arrow there. 2 stop, 3, 4, and 5. So I wanted to give that a go today, and we'll see the results when I'm done with the day. So as you can see, I set up right here on this big boulder that I'm standing on. And I shot upstream. I did, before I put on the filter, I focus stacked with 3 exposures at f8, and I caught this hook here with moss on it, this branch, and then the leaves on that tree overhanging, and then of course that old dead log up above there. And then when I put on the filter, I kept it at f8 and shot at 2-second exposure, and hoping that will come out nice. And on that filter, 2 stops. And there's a look downstream from where I'm standing here. hiked up a bit from where I was a little while ago, where I showed you. And I've been up here last autumn also. But the flow was so low, I was able to wade up off the bank here. I can't do it now because the flow is too extreme. But I set up here below these boulders here, and a couple sets of walls, and did some focus stacking these boulders that are in the foreground without a lens, I mean a filter, that is. And I like this bunch of foliage that's on this big boulder here with the moss. And there's some vines creeping down off the top of that boulder there. I'll show you. And focus stacked that. And then the furthest boulder upriver with the moss on that with 3 exposures. And F8. And I stuck with that for this series. And then I stuck on the ND filter, adjustable ND filter that I was telling you about, and set it for 2 stops. And again, F8, I kept it there and shot a few with that. And then I focus stacked with 3 exposures as well. I brought it in quite a bit to try to get that foliage on that rock there. And again, the boulder's in the foreground, and the foliage on the boulder, and then the moss in the back beyond the falls. And F8, and I kept it at a pretty normal exposure. I learned that my Canon 6D, old camera, I know, but it's perfect for me out here in the wilderness, and that it runs hot. And so often I'll shoot with it a stop or 2 below normal exposure. And I pretty much like the results from that. And of course, if I put on an ND filter, I have to adjust accordingly. But I usually shoot without a filter, just a normal exposure, a stop or 2 below, because I like the results a little darker. And of course, I can always bring out the shadows and detail in Photoshop and Lightroom. I'm not going to be out here all day. It's still morning. But what's nice is the sunlight in a cavern, or basically a valley, and the Quilcene River runs through it from the Olympics on the east side of the Olympic Mountains off of 101 and dumps into Hood Canal. So it takes a while for the sunlight to come over, but I can see on the hills here on the other side of the valley on the east side, sunlight starting to come over, and I might wait it out a little bit, see if I can get a little ultraviolet coming down on the river here. So hopefully, without spending too much more time, I want to get back here pretty soon and call it a morning. So this is my angle here. You can tell I left the camera up here and had it pretty wide. I think I left it at close to 24 millimeters in f8, and with just a normal exposure. These rocks in the foreground here, just above this riffle, and brought that in focus. And then there's that foliage there on that big center boulder. Tried to bring that in with the second exposure, and then the falls beyond that and the moss on that upper rock, brought that in focus for the third exposure. And then I brought it in a little closer, and to try to capture that foliage on that boulder a little tighter, and again with the 2-stop neutral density filter and f8. And I just played around with the exposure. I did a few with just a standard exposure and dropped it down, even with the filter, a couple stops, and I think I'll like that result a little better. As you can see, sunlight, pardon me, up above is starting to filter through the canopy there of the trees. If I give it a little longer, maybe I'll catch some on the river here. moved on down the river, and I think I got my wish. The light is penetrating through the canopy down on the river up above these falls here. I took a lot of exposures here. I didn't focus stack much, but I actually put on a circular polarizer to kind of bring those highlights down to more of a gold. And at f8 and f11 I went back and forth, and then put on the ND filter, and I kept it at 2 stops. With the polarizer, I think they turned out pretty good. As I wrapped up these last set of exposures, the light was just coming down up top there and bouncing off the river, so I think it's quite pretty. So this might be my last stop here along the river before I head back. What a phenomenal morning, blue sky, gorgeous weather here on the Olympic Peninsula and on the Quilcene River. The exposure times varied with the polarizer, of course, and 1 or 2 stops, played with both 1 or 2 stops under. I don't need to slow it down a whole lot because it's still a bit dark down in here. But and the same when I put on the 2-stop mist filter I was talking about. I kept it at a normal exposure, f8 and f11. And I think they turned out quite pretty. What I'm trying to do is capture that sunlight up above on the water and through the trees with the darker flow down below in these boulders. Nice contrast. Pretty cool. A few times some birds, they're not ducks I don't think, but they just come screaming up the river right off the surface here, right up through the forest, and they keep doing that this morning, and it's pretty cool to watch. They're like fighter jets, just come screaming through, and there's some water birds moving up and down the river as well. It's great. I was hiking back from up above there, up above that fallen log. I bushwhacked, basically there's no trail, and hence the waders. So I'm cutting through the brush. But on the far side of that overhang, that dead, what looks dead overhang, there's new growth. Shoots are coming straight up there. So it's not dead, it's covered with moss. And I was on the far side or the base of that, and I shot lengthways. With a little of the golden light in the canopy up above and the new growth, a little bit of the water down below, so hopefully that'll turn out as well. A pretty neat old tree that's broken down and rugged, but it's still alive. I came this morning for what I wanted, and again, like I said, it had been since I think October. I was up here. The leaves were pretty much gone, but enjoyed the autumn colors, and now spring is in full swing and totally different. And now with the golden light coming through the canopy, it's pretty sweet. So that's about it. I think I'll wander on back, and take care. Appreciate you watching.